Alright, so starting out on part 2 of our firework animation assignment, if we look back at the demo, what we're going to add in this segment is a third firework to add some variety as far as the colors go, and then some text going across saying some kind of congratulations or any combination of words to say that to someone, and adding the spotlight effect to that word. So to get started in this, we're going to create another firework movie clip. As you can see, we still have just one layer here with two different fireworks on it. So I'm actually going to start by adding two more layers to this project and calling them firework 2 and firework 3. Okay, and I'm actually going to take this second one that I had added, the one on the right here, and I'm going to cut it, or edit cut, and then I'll go to the second layer, firework 2, and I'm going to go to edit and paste in place. Paste in place is a nice feature of Photoshop. Whenever you cut or copy something, you can paste it back in the same spot that it was on another layer. And actually what I'm going to do is stagger these a little bit. So I'm going to take this keyframe and I'm going to click and drag it out to about the 15th frame. And what that's going to do is cause these to stagger as they shoot off. So they won't shoot off both at the same time. One will shoot off and then the other will shoot off 15 frames later. I'm going to go down a ways in my animation here on the main timeline, and I'm going to go down to about the 100th frame and just press F5 to create some blank frames there so that these animations have a chance to play out. And then on the third keyframe here, what we're going to do is we could actually start a new one. Let's say go up to 30, and we'll press F6 here, and at this point we'll create our new firework. So we'll start the same process again, taking our rectangle tool. This time we'll draw a rectangle right in between the other two. Okay, so right in between there. As I zoom in, you can see it already has a bit of a gradient applied to it. I'm going to check and make sure that that's correct. Okay, so I changed the color slightly on this. We do want the alpha to be 0 on either side of our colors. So we'll turn that alpha down to 0. I'll keep this yellow because that's not a color I have, but I'm going to change this green to maybe something like a blue. Something to add a little more variety to the colors of my fireworks here. Okay, so that looks pretty good. The other thing I want to do is take my gradient transform tool, and remember we want to rotate this. So I'm going to pull it from the corner where you see that circle and rotate it this way. And then what I'm going to do is take this box with the arrow, and I'm actually going to pull that down in order to kind of stretch out this gradient a little bit. Okay, pull it down just a little bit further. And that should do. And remember, our entire animation of the firework is going to be held within this little bar here. So it's just one little instance on your major timeline. But I'll press F8 and convert this into a movie clip. I'll call this firework 2 and save it. And so you can see it pops up in my library here, and I'll double click on this in order to start a second firework animation. Okay, so remember the first part of this animation is to make the tail. So I'm going to call this layer tail, and we want to come out maybe about, if I remember correctly, I'll go back and check on my other firework. If I double click here, we go to about the 50th frame for that tail to extend. Okay, and then to the 70th will be it disappearing. So if I go back out to my scene 1, I select this gradient now and go back into firework 2. I remember I have the 50th frame. I would press F6 again, and here is where I'm going to actually extend this gradient. So I'll go back to my free transform tool and I will extend this gradient upwards into my stage. I'm going to zoom out for a second so I can see how far I'm going upwards. I think I can go up a little bit taller, so I'm going to take my transform tool again and stretch this up a little bit higher. And that seems pretty good. I don't think I want it to go too much higher other than that. My firework will will go off the page. So then on the 70th frame, we're going to press F6 again, and we're going to take this gradient and we are going to just kind of squish it down to almost nothing, a little bit further, and then on the keyframe right after that, we'll press F6 one more time, and then we'll press delete in order to clear out that gradient. So what I can do now is I could add in the shape tweens. So these should be shape tweens that take this shape of a gradient and then turn it into a different shape. So if I go back and kind of scroll through this, I should see the small gradient growing into a larger one, and then growing back into a small one, and then disappearing. Okay, so we got that all set. The stream is set. We'll add 2 more layers. Remember, one is going to be the mask, so we'll name that on top, and the one below it will be the gradient. So I'll just call this grade for short. Where I'd like this to come into play is about the 55th frame or so. So I'll shift click on both keyframes and then press F6. So then I have a new keyframe on each layer. What we can then do is on the gradient keyframe, we want to take our oval tool and we will draw a circle holding shift, clicking and dragging, and make a circle right here. And we still have it as a linear gradient. We're going to need to change that to a radial gradient. And that looks pretty good. I think I could make it maybe just a smidge bigger, and so I will. And make sure that it's centered with the stream. Okay, or the tail rather. And then on the layer right above it, I'm going to choose a color that contrasts this well. Something that may work well is kind of this neon green. And what I'm going to do is take my brush tool. Remember, with your brush tool selected, we want to make sure that the smoothing is set to the highest possible, which is 100. So I'm going to set that smoothing up high. That way it makes our edges really look good as far as making the firework effect believable. So I'm going to take my brush tool right on this mask layer. I'm going to start to draw these kind of like flare type shapes. Remember, mix it up with the size, some small ones and some larger ones. Alright, that looks pretty good. Maybe add a little more splash on the top. Okay, and so there we have it. So what then we want to do is take each of these things, alright, the gradient and then the mask kind of splashing layer. I'm going to just add a couple more. Oops. Yeah, one more on the side there. That looks good, balanced out. And we're going to convert these to graphics, not movie clips, but graphics. Okay, so I'll call this one grade 2, and maybe I'll call this one when I go to F6, oops, wrong key, F8 to convert to a graphic, and this is going to be mask 2, we'll call that. Alright, so going ahead, we want to go out to about maybe the 80th keyframe. We'll select both and press F6. So I'm clicking on one, holding shift, clicking on the second, and pressing F6. And then we'll also go down to maybe the 100th frame or so, and we'll give ourselves 2 more keyframes there. Okay, so we should have this first one, remember, is going to be where things are really small. Okay, so from our last firework animation, we should remember that I want the firework to start out really small. So I'll take my free transform tool and I'm going to make sure I hold shift to keep this a proportional circle and shrink it down really small there. And then I'm going to also take the mask layer, the splash, and I'm going to shrink this down really small as well, making sure that the gradient fits inside of it. Okay, so if I zoom in, I want to make sure that this gradient is not showing at all, that it fits inside of this mask. Okay, so there's a spot really close there, but that takes care of that. And then now what will happen is when we go back to this 80th keyframe, it should be big, about the size that we wanted it. And then lastly, off at the end here, we want to take both of these together and make them just a little bit bigger. So we can click on one keyframe and hold shift and click on the other one right above it or below it, and then press our free transform tool. We can transform them both together, and be careful about stretching and not keeping the center lined up. We need the center to stay lined up there. So as you can see, when you pull on one corner, it does throw my center off a little bit, but I balance that out by going back to the other corner and stretching from the other side as well. So just kind of clicking back and forth here, I can see the center stays pretty much the same, so that should be good. And on this last keyframe here, the 100th keyframe of this gradient, what we need to have that do is fade out to black. So where we'll find that is when you have this gradient selected and you look down your properties bar, you should have something that says color. We'll go to alpha here and then turn that alpha all the way down to 0 again. Okay, so that pretty much takes care of that second firework. We can go ahead and now add in some motion tweens. 4 motion tweens right there, and that should pretty much do it as far as making our second firework. Oh wait, last thing really is to convert this layer, the mask layer, into an actual mask. Okay, so the mask is going to work and make this into a firework animation. Alright, so and as I go back to my main stage, you can see I have firework 1, 2, and 3 staggered, 1, 2, and 3, so they'll all go off at different times. Let's take a quick preview. 1, 2, and 3. And what I'm noticing is it gets cut off a little bit right at the very end. It's because my main timeline does not quite go long enough for this last firework animation. So what we can see is that it starts on 30, right? And our entire firework animation is 100 frames. So I need this entire timeline out here in our main stage to go to at least 130 frames. So I'm going to go to 130, shift and click on all of them, and then make sure that they all press F5 to make them all just frames extending that far. And so now when I go back to preview this again, I should have 1, 2, 3, and they fully play out. So you saw that one fully fade away, and then the next one shot in. Okay, so lastly we are going to add in some text to this project and quickly save. Always a good idea to save every so often. And I'm going to add a couple new layers, drag these down to the bottom. We're going to make 3 new layers. Okay, so 4, 5, and 6. One of them is going to be any word of your choice. So what I had used in my example was congrats. You could say nice job, nice work, any kind of congratulatory statement that deserves fireworks. Okay, so maybe for this one I'm going to call this nice job. I have compiled a list of terms or phrases that we could use here. And I will post this in our assignment, but good job, good work, that's it, perfect, sensational, splendid, marvelous, clever, tremendous, dynamite. All these are words that you could use in this space in the animation. So look over the list, choose one. I think I actually like the sound of superb best for this one. So I'm going to call this layer superb so I know that it is that. And now I have 2 other layers here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just start by choosing my text tool, and on this superb layer I am going to make a text box and write superb. Kind of a funny word once you see it like that. Alright, so and for this I want it to be a little bit lower down so that my fireworks are kind of taking place above the word itself. So I'm just kind of dragging this down a little bit. The color that I want for this, I think I'm going to make kind of like an orange color. Yeah, I'm going to go with an orange here. And so now if I preview this animation again really quickly, I've got superb and some fireworks going off. Okay. And next what I need to do is I'll take this this text, I'm going to select it, and I'm going to go to Edit and Copy, and then I'm going to go to the layer above it, okay, directly above it, and then paste in place. So what I should have now is one layer that has text on it and the other one that has the same exact text right below it. I'm going to call this one now, I'm going to call this light text, and this is going to be a lighter text, so this will actually keep this orange. What I'm going to do is go back to my initial text color, and I'm going to turn this color down to something darker, because in order to create the spotlight effect you have to have some text that's dark and then text that's light layered on top of it. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the visibility on my top light text to see what this color really looks like. So it's more of a light brown, and then when the spotlight hits it, it's going to turn into this orange. Okay, I'm going to take this color and turn it down even more so it's even darker. It's going to make that spotlight effect work a little bit better. Okay, and then layer 6, actually what I'm going to call this is the spotlight. Okay, and what we're going to do on this layer is we are going to take our oval tool and we are going to draw a circle right next to our word, whatever you have chosen. And I do always like when this is going to be a mask, whenever you're creating a mask, it's a good idea to make it a color that's something really different from the text color that you're working with. Okay, so this is going to be the mask that's kind of revealing the word spotlight. What I need to make this into is this needs to be converted into a graphic. So I'm going to press F8 and convert this into a graphic and call it spotlight. Okay, and this is also going to be a mask layer. So what I'm going to do is right click, create a mask, alright, and it automatically, remember, always creates a locked layer whenever you create a mask. And so what's going to happen though is once I create a motion tween for this spotlight, is it's going to reveal that the lighter version of my text. So if we add in one motion tween here, if I go to my spotlight layer, go ahead to maybe the 20th frame and press F6. I'm going to take the spotlight then and move it to the other side, and then create a motion tween between those. Okay, so this spotlight should be moving from right to left, or left to right rather, and it's when we preview this, it's going to show us that superb, it just went across once. So as you can see, it shows us the word but stops. So what we're going to need to do is add a couple more motion tweens to make this go back and forth, really create that scanning kind of a spotlight effect. So we'll go ahead to the 40th keyframe. We'll do this every 20 or so. We'll go to 40th, 60th, we'll add another, 80th, we'll add another, 100, and then 120 will be the last. Okay, and so what we need to do on each of these keyframes is just keep moving the spotlight back and forth. So on this 40th keyframe, our spotlight should be back on the left side. If we go ahead to the 60th, it should be on the right, so that's good. On the 80th, it should be back on the left side. And then the 100th, it should be back on the right, so that is good. And then on the 120th, it should be back on the left side. Okay, so we have the spotlight in position. Now I just have to go to each one of these and add a motion tween. And we are almost completed with this spotlight animation. Alright, so then let's just make sure that goes back there. Alright, I'm going to give this a quick save, and when I preview, now we have the light going back and forth the whole time and the fireworks taking off. Okay, and so that pretty much completes this assignment. Again, remember, you can choose any word to go in the middle here for your kind of congratulations, and you can also choose any colors you want for your fireworks. They do not have to be the same colors that I had chosen. So I hope that you have fun and have success with this lesson. Definitely becoming a little more complex as we continue ahead in our animation class. And so I wish you the best of luck.